Imagine this: empresses with dozens of official consorts, each chosen for a specific state skill, from war strategy to brewing the perfect tea. In the Great Riverine Sisterhood, a man's legal standing was entirely dependent on his mother or wife for over 1,000 years. The war declarations of the Scythian stepmothers were delivered by the youngest royal daughter riding completely alone into enemy territory, armed only with the message. And in the Republic of the Vestal Flame, aspiring male politicians had to prove their worth by managing the household of a high-ranking priestess for a year. Number 12. The Coral Throne Polity. Their navigator queens charted empires across endless blue. Way out in the vast Pacific of another timeline, the Austronesian expansion wasn't just about finding new islands. It was about building a connected empire ruled by women who could read the stars and currents like open books. Coral Throne Polity emerged from a lineage of master navigators, exclusively female, who held the secrets of the wayfinding song, a complex oral tradition detailing every current, star path, and island chain. This knowledge was power. Polity wasn't a single landmass, but a sprawling network of island chiefdoms, all swearing allegiance to the High Navigator Queen, who resided on the legendary island of Hawaiikiloa, said to be built entirely on coral platforms. Power was matrilineal, passed from mother to eldest daughter, but only if the daughter could prove her worth by navigating a solo voyage to a distant newly discovered island by her 16th birthday. Failure meant a life of quiet respect, but not rule. The High Queen was advised by a council of wave mothers, elder stateswomen and navigators. Men were respected as warriors, builders, and fishermen, and often served as captains of the great double-hulled canoes. But they always sailed under the navigational command of a trained female wayfinder. Marriage alliances were crucial, with prince consorts from various islands sent to the High Queen's court, ensuring loyalty across the vast oceanic domain. Their currency, not gold but intricately carved pearl shells and, more importantly, navigational charts made of stick and shell, the most complex of which were state secrets. They were known for their incredible sea gardens, massive aquaculture farms built into lagoons, and their ability to mobilize vast fleets for trade, and when necessary for swift island-to-island warfare. Legend says Queen Lilani VII once summoned a fleet of 500 war canoes in a single moon cycle to defend a remote outpost, guided by nothing but starlight. Number 11. The Auroran Queendom. Where mound cities touched the sky and sun, grandmothers ruled. In a North America untouched by European arrival for centuries longer, the Mississippian cultures blossomed into something vast and centralized. The Auroran Queendom, centered around the megacity of Cahokia Nova, far larger and longer lasting than in our timeline, was ruled by a succession of sun grandmothers. This wasn't just a title. It was believed the ruling woman was a direct descendant of the sun deity, her lineage traced impeccably through the female line. The divergence point: a series of Matic female spiritual leaders around 900 CE consolidated power, claiming divine mandate through astronomical prophecies that uncannily came true, solidifying their authority. The Queendom was a confederation of major towns and ceremonial centers connected by meticulously maintained riverways and footpaths. Each town was governed by a local clan mother, who answered to the sun grandmother. Men formed the warrior castes and were the primary hunters and laborers for large public works, like the enormous earthen mounds that gave the culture its name. However, all property, land, and clan identity passed through the mother. A man lived with his wife's family, and his children belonged to her clan. The Sun Grandmother's court was a vibrant center of art, astronomy, and religious ceremony. They developed a sophisticated calendar system based on solar and lunar observations from the tops of their highest mounds, and were renowned for their exquisite copperwork and feather capes. Their influence extended through trade networks, stretching from the Great Lakes to the Gulf Coast. One of the most striking facts from their historical pictograms is the ritual of male accord, where young men, upon reaching adulthood, would present their crafts or hunting trophies not to their fathers, but to the eldest woman in their maternal line for approval and blessing. The Sun Grandmother herself rarely left Cahokia Nova. Her pronouncements carried by swift female runners known as wind sprites. Number 10. The Serpent Mothers of the Indus. Guardians of the primordial river's secrets. Imagine the Indus Valley civilization not fading away, but instead solidifying into a powerful, enduring empire under the spiritual and temporal leadership of women. In this alternate history, the prominent female figurines found in Harappan sites weren't just fertility symbols, but representations of the Serpent Mothers, a council of high priestesses who governed the major cities like Mohenjo-Daro and Harappa Prime. The historical shift occurred when a prolonged drought was ended, according to legend, by the chief priestess invoking the great serpent goddess, leading to the priestesses being recognized as direct conduits to the divine forces controlling the life-giving river. Society was organized around large communal great houses, each headed by a matron who oversaw the distribution of resources and the education of children. While men were involved in trade, agriculture, and craftsmanship, their standardized weights and measures were legendary across continents. The ultimate authority in all matters, from legal disputes to agricultural planning, rested with the local matron, who in turn answered to the Serpent Mothers Council in the capital. The script, which remains undeciphered in our world, was in this timeline a widely understood syllabary primarily taught and maintained by female scribes. They were masters of urban planning, with sophisticated sanitation and water management systems that were unparalleled for millennia. One of their most distinctive customs was the river gifting, an annual ceremony where young men presented handcrafted offerings to the river, seeking the favor of the serpent goddess for their crafts or ventures, with the chief priestess interpreting the river's acceptance through intricate rituals. Their power wasn't military in the aggressive sense, but based on immense wealth from trade, lapis lazuli, carnelian cotton, and the deep spiritual authority of the Serpent Mothers, whose pronouncements were considered law. Number 9. The Obsidian Hand Matriarchy. Priestess, queens of the smoking mirror. In the heart of Mesoamerica, where civilizations rose and fell like the sun and moon, the Obsidian Hand Matriarchy carved out an empire renowned for its fierce devotion and intricate cosmic understanding. This wasn't the Aztec or Mayan empire we know, but one that emerged when a powerful cult dedicated to a creator-destroyer sky goddess, Itzpapalotl, obsidian butterfly, seized control around the 5th century CE. The priestesses of Itzpapalotl, known for their ritualistic use of obsidian blades and mirrors for scrying, became both spiritual and military leaders. The transition happened during a period of immense regional chaos, where the priestesses offered stability and a unifying, albeit terrifying, spiritual focus. The empire was ruled by a Tlatani Quat, or Speaker Queen, who was also the highest priestess. Her word was law, believed to be the direct command of the goddess. Society was rigidly structured. Women formed the ruling class, the priesthood, and elite warrior units known as the Obsidian Talons. Men were farmers, artisans, and the bulk of the infantry, led by female commanders. Marriage was a complex affair. Noblewomen often took multiple flower husbands chosen for beauty, artistic talent, or lineage, who had little political power but contributed to the prestige of her house. One of the matriarchy's most chilling facts was the Night of Reddened Sky, an annual ceremony where captured enemy warriors were sacrificed by the Speaker Queen herself, their hearts offered to its papalotl to ensure the sun would rise. Yet, they were also incredible astronomers, mathematicians, and artists. Their cities, like the capital Xicalanco, were marvels of stone architecture, adorned with terrifyingly beautiful depictions of their goddess. They developed a complex herbal pharmacology, and female healers were highly revered. Their influence was maintained through a combination of fear, tribute, and a tightly controlled trade in obsidian, cacao, and quetzal feathers. Number 8. The Silk Tide Hegemony. Merchant empresses who ruled the richest road. Imagine the Silk Road, not just a network of routes, but the backbone of a powerful decentralized empire led by women whose wealth could rival kings. The Silk Tide Hegemony wasn't a centrally ruled state in the traditional sense, but a confederation of immensely wealthy city-states and oasis kingdoms stretching from the Pamirs to the doorstep of the Mediterranean. Its genesis lies in an alternate timeline where Sogdian and Tocharian merchant families, traditionally reliant on long-distance trade, saw their women take increasingly dominant roles. This happened when a series of plagues disproportionately affected men, and wives and daughters stepped in to manage the caravans and businesses, proving incredibly adept. Over generations, this became the norm. The hegemony was led by a council of Great Mothers of the coin, the matriarchs of the most powerful trading clans who met annually in Samarkand Ultima to set trade policies, adjudicate disputes, and pool resources for mutual defense. Each city-state had its own trade queen or caravan mistress, while men managed the day-to-day running of caravans and acted as guards. The contracts, the finances, and the strategic decisions were firmly in female hands. A woman's dowry often consisted of shares in caravan routes or trading posts. They developed sophisticated banking systems, letters of credit, and even a form of traveler's insurance. Their silk summons was a document that could halt or redirect any caravan within the hegemony's influence, a power more potent than many armies. They weren't known for large standing armies, but for their ability to hire the best mercenary companies money could buy, and their intelligence network, built upon the constant flow of merchants and travelers, was legendary. Their cities were cosmopolitan wonders, filled with goods and people from a dozen civilizations, and the Great Mothers were patrons of art, literature, and diverse religions, understanding that open exchange benefited everyone. Popular saying was, "A sword cuts one way, a gold coin cuts all ways." Number 7. The Isle of Whispering Reeds. Where Druid queens wove spells of sovereignty. In the misty Greenlands that would become Britain and Ireland, Roman influence shattered early and receded completely. In its place, the Celtic traditions of powerful queens and druidesses didn't just survive, they flourished and unified. The Isle of Whispering Reeds was the name given to this collective of kingdoms ruled by high druid queens who combined spiritual authority with shrewd political and military leadership. The turning point was a figure much like Boudica, but one who, through an alliance of British and Irish tribes cemented by her unmatched spiritual charisma and strategic genius, successfully drove out the fledgling Roman presence for good around 100 CE. Her descendants and successors formalized this new order. Power was vested in the High Druid Queen, chosen by a council of elder druidesses from among those who showed the greatest aptitude for both governance and the old ways. A deep understanding of nature, healing, prophecy, and law. Each major tribe or region had its own queen, who paid homage and sent representatives to the High Queen's court, often located in a sacred grove rather than a traditional city. Men were warriors, bards, and craftsmen, highly respected but outside the direct line of political or spiritual succession. Kinship and inheritance were matrilineal. The Druidesses were the judges, healers, and historians, preserving lore through complex oral traditions and an Ogham-like script used for sacred texts. They were renowned for their song battles, where disputes between queens were sometimes settled by contests of poetic and magical invocation rather than bloodshed, though they could be fierce warriors when truly threatened. Their whispering reed councils, held in hidden sanctuaries, were where major decisions were made. A unique custom was the fosterage of princes, where sons of allied chieftains or kings from mainland Europe were sent to be educated at the court of a druid queen, ensuring peaceful relations and spreading the Isle's cultural influence. They never sought to conquer beyond their shores, but were fiercely protective of their lands using their knowledge of the terrain, and some whispered the very elements to repel invaders. Number 6. The Skyweaver Ascendancy. Andean empresses, who read the fate of empires in the stars, high in the Andes long before the Inca. We know a different kind of empire took root. The Skyweaver Ascendancy was built on the absolute authority of women who were believed to be the sole interpreters of celestial messages. Their founding myth tells of Mamaquilla, the moon goddess, directly choosing the first star talker empress from among a group of priestess astronomers during a solar eclipse that spared their valley while devastating others. This event, around 300 BC, established a matrilineal dynasty where only women trained in the high-altitude observatories could rule. The empress, known as the Apu Paniska, mountain she who speaks with stars, governed from the city of Kolkapata, nestled at an almost unbreathable altitude. Her pronouncements, derived from complex astronomical calculations and observations, dictated everything: when to plant and harvest, when to go to war, when to build temples, even auspicious times for marriage. The ascendancy controlled a vast network of terraced farms, storehouses, kulkas, and an intricate road system maintained by a male labor corps. While men served as regional administrators and military commanders, the Condor Guard, they did so under the Empress's direct celestial guidance, relayed through her moon daughters, a council of high priestess astronomers. All land was technically owned by the Empress, its use granted to communities based on her interpretations. One of their most remarkable achievements was the Kipu Kilka, a highly advanced form of knotted core records that encode not just numbers but complex narratives and astronomical data, readable only by trained female Kipu keepers. They believed the stars held the patterns of all existence, and by understanding them, they maintained cosmic harmony and the prosperity of the empire. Failure to heed a star talker's prophecy was said to bring immediate celestial retribution, a belief that kept the empire remarkably stable for centuries. Number 5. The Scythian Steppe Mothers. The Quetzalcoatl and its iron Amazons. Across the vast, windswept steppes of Eurasia, a different kind of nomadic empire thundered the Quetzalcoatl, ruled by warrior queens and their formidable cavalry. Drawing inspiration from the historical Sarmatians and Scythians, where warrior women were a reality, this alternate timeline saw these traditions coalesce into a dominant political and military force. The shift happened when a coalition of all-female warbands, led by the legendary Queen Tomiris II, a descendant of the original who defeated Cyrus, united disparate tribes under a single banner after a series of decisive victories against patriarchal invaders around 200 CE. She established the law of the Keshik, where leadership was determined by prowess in battle and strategic acumen, open to any woman. The supreme ruler was the Kizil Khan, Red Queen, elected by a council of Noyan Khatuns, princess commanders, who led their own war bands or keshigs. While men were part of the keshigs and respected for their skills as archers and horsemen, all command positions were held by women. Wealth was measured in horses, cattle, and conquered tribute, all controlled by the women. A woman's status was often displayed by the number of ordu-bigai, court husbands, she maintained, men chosen for their skills, loyalty, or alliances they brought. The Kizil Khanate was feared for its lightning-fast raids and its heavily armored female cataphracts, known as the Iron Maidens. Their battle standards were horsetail banners, dyed crimson. One of their famous tactics was the feigned retreat of the daughters, where a seemingly smaller, faster unit of young women would lure enemies into a devastating ambush by the main Keshig. They had no permanent cities, their capital being the Golden Orda, the vast encampment of the reigning Kizil Khan, which moved with the seasons and strategic needs. Formal education was practical. Riding, archery, tactics, and the oral histories of the great Khanates, taught by elder warrior women around the campfires. Their justice was swift and harsh, often decided by single combat between the accuser and accused, if both were warriors. Number 4. The Republic of the Vestal Flame. Where priestesses forged an empire from Rome's ashes. Imagine a Roman Empire that crumbled not into disparate kingdoms ruled by generals, but was reforged by its most sacred order of women. In this timeline, as the Western Roman Empire faced collapse in the 4th century CE, the Vestal Virgins, long revered as guardians of Rome's sacred flame and symbols of its continuity, stepped into the power vacuum. Led by a series of politically astute and modic High Vestals, Vestalis Maxima, they used their immense moral authority, control over significant temple lands and wealth, and the loyalty of certain legions to restore order and establish a new form of governance, the Republic of the Vestal Flame, or Nova Roma. The state was governed by the Senatus Vestalis, a council composed of the 30 active Vestals and 100 Mater Consuls, elder women, often former Vestals, who had completed their 30-year service, elected for their wisdom and administrative skill. The Vestalis Maxima held the supreme executive and religious authority, a position held for life. Men could serve in the military, in bureaucracy, and in commerce, and even form their own advisory plebeian council, but ultimate legislative and judicial power resided with the Senatus Vestalis. Citizenship was granted through matrilineal descent or by special decree of the Senate. One of the most striking social institutions was the Ignis Probatio, trial by flame, where men aspiring to significant public office or military command had to undergo a period of service and scrutiny directly under a senior Vestal, proving their competence, loyalty, and moral character. Nova Roma became known for its stability, its focus on infrastructure. Aqueducts, roads, granaries were meticulously maintained as sacred trusts, and its surprisingly effective diplomacy, often levering religious missions to foster alliances. Their legions, dedicated to Vesta and the Republic, were renowned for their discipline. The sacred flame in the Temple of Vesta was never allowed to die, symbolizing the eternal endurance of their state, and its priestesses became the quiet, steady rulers of a renewed Mediterranean power. Number 3. The Aethel Guard Queendom, where Shield Queens forged a northern powerhouse. In the lands that would become England, the Viking incursions of the 9th and 10th centuries took a different turn. Instead of Alfred the Great, imagine Queen Ealhswith, his historical wife, proving to be a military and political genius after Alfred's early demise. She rallied the Saxon kingdoms, incorporating and adapting Viking warrior traditions, including their shield maidens, into her own forces. This established a powerful precedent, and the Aethelgard Queendom was born, a society where warrior queens and female nobles held sway. Queendom was ruled by the Hihehwen, High Queen, a title typically passed from mother to eldest daughter, provided she proved herself capable in both governance and warfare by her coming-of-age ceremony, the Skildhalgung, shield hallowing. She was advised by a Wittemut Quina, a council of powerful Eald women and duchesses. Men were warriors, farmers, and craftsmen, and while a queen would take a prince consort, he held no independent power, his main role being to provide heirs and ceremonial support. Land, titles, and wealth were inherited through the female line. The laws known as the Motorlagu, Mother's Law, gave women significant legal advantages, including the right to divorce easily and retain all property. Their military was famed for its steel angels, regiments of heavily armed female hoplites, and their dragon-ship flotillas, crewed by both men and women, but always commanded by a female admiral. The Auroran Queendom became a major power in Northern Europe, controlling lucrative trade routes in wool, tin, and amber. They were also patrons of learning, with monastic scriptoriums run by abbesses, producing beautifully illuminated manuscripts. One curious fact recorded in their chronicles is that a man's testimony in court against a woman of higher or equal standing required corroboration from at least 2 other men, while a noblewoman's word alone was often considered sufficient. Their coronation ceremony involved the new queen receiving not just a crown, but a ceremonial shield and spear, symbolizing her dual role as ruler and protector. Number 2. The Han Azure Concord. An empire ruled by dragon empresses and scholar wives. What if Wu Zetian's reign in China wasn't an anomaly, but the beginning of a lasting matriarchal dynasty? In this alternate history, Empress Wu's descendants, the Azure empresses, consolidated female rule, transforming the imperial system over centuries. The Han Azure Concord, as it came to be known, was a vast and sophisticated empire where women held the mandate of heaven. The philosophical underpinning shifted too, with interpretations of Confucianism and Taoism emphasizing the power of yin, the receptive and nurturing, as the true foundation of stable governance. The Dragon Empress ruled supreme, her authority absolute. Succession was matrilineal, usually to the eldest or most capable daughter. The imperial bureaucracy, while staffed by men in lower positions, saw all its highest ministerial posts and governorships held by women who had to pass incredibly rigorous civil service examinations, focusing on classics, law, strategy, and ethics. One of the Concord's most unique institutions was the Palace of Luminous Consorts. The Empress maintained a large retinue of imperial consorts, men selected for their intellect, artistic talents, or political connections from noble families. These consorts were highly educated and often advised the Empress informally or undertook special projects, but held no official power themselves. Their status was entirely dependent on the Empress's favor. Concubinage for empresses was a state institution, with prospective consorts undergoing rigorous exams. Society saw women as the heads of households, controlling family property and ancestral rights, while men pursued scholarly arts, commerce, or military careers, under female generals, of course. Their public status was secondary to that of women of equivalent rank. Concord was known for its incredible artistic achievements, particularly in porcelain and silk. Its vast infrastructure, projects like the Grand Canal, significantly expanded and maintained under female engineers. And its powerful Azure banner, armies. They believed that when women ruled with wisdom and balance, the empire enjoyed unparalleled peace and prosperity, a great harmony reflected in the azure blue of their imperial standards. Number 1. The Great Riverine Sisterhood. Millennia of matriarchs on the sacred river's banks. Imagine an ancient Egypt where the tradition of female pharaohs like Hatshepsut became not the exception but the absolute rule, evolving into an unshakable matriarchal empire that lasted for millennia. The Great Riverine Sisterhood of the Kemet Delta. The divergence occurred early around the Second Dynasty, when a series of powerful queens established a firm matrilineal succession. Backed by a reinterpretation of Mayat cosmic order, that emphasized the primacy of the mother goddess Isis and her earthly representatives. Empire was ruled by the Nesu Mut, Mother Queen, considered a living goddess. Her power was absolute, her lineage traced directly back to the divine. All land was theoretically owned by the Nesu Mut, and its stewardship granted through her authority. Priestesshoods, particularly those of Isis, Sekhmet, and Hathor, held immense influence, forming the core of the bureaucracy, judiciary, and educational systems. Men served as scribes, artisans, soldiers, and administrators, but always under female oversight. For centuries, a man could only gain legal personhood or citizenship through his mother or wife. He was identified in official documents as son of mother's name or husband of wife's name. Inheritance, property, and titles passed exclusively through the female line. Marriage was a contract where the groom often brought a service dowry, a commitment of labor or skills, to the bride's family. The sisterhood was renowned for its stability, its monumental architecture, even grander and more widespread than in our timeline, with temples dedicated to female deities dominating every city, and its advanced knowledge of medicine, mathematics, and astronomy, all primarily developed and taught in female-led temple schools. Their armies, often led by she generals, were formidable, protecting the fertile lands of the Delta and expanding trade routes deep into Africa and across the Mediterranean. The annual flooding of the life-giving river was celebrated with a massive festival led by the Nesu Mut herself, reaffirming the bond between the Mother Queen, the land, and the divine feminine that underpinned their entire civilization for over 3,000 years.